So Karen Gibson Roc is a poet, a spoken word artist, an actor, and textile artist. She has been performing and writing for the better part of her life, and she has been sewing since she was a child with her mother. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that. Karen had a handmade tote company, which she folded a few years back, and that's when she began quilting on a larger scale very recently. Art is life, and for Karen, this is a larger than life statement. She has dreamed of living as a full-time artist for many years. The past 5 years have seen that come into fruition. Quilting has evoked in Karen a way to move into the new with a fulfilled way of living. The continuous completion that comes with each project is a spiritual unfoldment, creating a higher vibration and a place for the soul to shine. Ooh, I love that. Currently, Karen is featured in the Modern Quilt Guild Journal with a quilt and a pattern. And Karen was also a finalist in the Minority Creative Grant Program. On the poetry and spoken word side, Karen has graced such stages as Glamorama, which was a fundraiser for both the Children's Cancer Research Fund and the Art Institute of Chicago. It was put together by Marshall Fields in conjunction with the Ford Modeling Agency. Karen has shared the bill with rock stars, including Patti LaBelle, the Commodores, and Sheila E. This is me turning green with envy, folks. She has also performed for HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam, and she's performed in many, many other venues. Karen has also produced and released her own independent spoken word album, 5 and 2 Fish, and she's been involved in many other spoken word and mixed media productions over the years. Karen is a Canadian Council for the Arts grant recipient for the spoken word and storytelling program for dubbed rap poetry. So welcome everyone, and welcome Karen. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And how are you today?
Actually, I'm doing very, very good today. The weather's great, feeling calm, feeling, very, very steady, let's say. All of this going on has us emotionally up and down. Today, I'm actually having a very clear and steady day. Yes,
So where are you talking to us from?
Oh, Culver City, California.
Ah, so you're in California. Now, I know that you have a very much an international background. Tell us where you were born, where you grew up. Give us some background.
Yes, I was born in Jamaica, but that was, I was a baby. I left when I was an infant, and was shipped off. My family and we moved to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where I grew up until my early 20s. And then my younger sister was, she's a dancer, and she was going to Alvin Ailey in New York, and she loved it. And I was just plodding along, and I said, well, I need an adventure. I'm going to come and join you. So I went to New York, and that's where I found myself. That's where I found out that, oh my God, I'm like a real artist. I got to figure it out. And I started writing, and it took years to find my way. And then I found my way into the spoken word and went to every open mic and honed my skills and put my guts into it, put my all into it. And then I transitioned from just being a cappella spoken word to working with musicians from all over the world, and landing in the genre of lounge music. And it's just been a great thing. And I can't explain how much it's given me. Until now, I'm telling you, the quilting has done something. Ooh, I have no idea. I mean, yeah, like you said, yes, I was sewing with my mom, and she, she taught me how to use patterns, and I was always in the fabric store. None of my others, they were off doing their own thing. So I was plodding behind my mother in the fabric stores. And it's just funny how you think back and I'm like, wow, I love a fabric store now. Oh my God, I love, and now that we're online, I'm like, can somebody just get me away from the computer and Etsy store and stop the bundle shopping and stop the fabric? It's a hot mess. I'm a hot mess. But I just realized how it has become this thing for me. But like you said, I used to do the totes and I liked it, but I sewed for money. And that was not taking me down a road that I enjoyed. And I was doing well and I was about to do some contract sewing and thinking about getting my bags in stores, and it was becoming this company. And then I swear my sewing machine started having tentacles and it was going to strangle me. And I was like, I don't like this sewing. I literally covered up and put it away for a couple of years because I was like, that's not, and focused back on my poetry and published a book. And but then, I made a quilt for myself and for my sister, nothing compared to what I'm doing now. Just, I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do,
Right.
so I put it all away. And then COVID came, and then I just pulled it out and I started like making these little scrappy quilt things I made one for my sister. I made something from 2 things for my mom. And I was like, because I'm thinking, okay, my daughter, let's do some crafts, you know? And this was literally at the top of COVID. And then I just started diving into it and making and sewing. I had some pieces of things I'd started long before COVID. And so when I went in my bin, it was more scrappy. Like I had all this plaid stuff, and I did these, I had these quilt tops. I didn't even know the quilt top. Let's say I had quilt tops, pieces of these things. And I was like, okay, well, let me try, see what it was. And I just couldn't stop. And then the Modern Quilters Association contacted me, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm looking at my husband, I'm like, but I'm gonna do it. This is because, and off I went, and I drove that poor girl crazy how to get this pattern done, but they were so good with me. And making the quilt wasn't hard. Designing the quilt wasn't hard. The pattern was, I was out of my mind. But
Well, you
yeah,
took a big
I learned.
leap.
I did. I can tell you, I was all the way ready to make a quilt, but the other components of turning quilting into an art career or into a career of textile artistry and the art thing wasn't my issue. I've always, as a kid, like applique, like zigzag, my mom taught me, and all of that, but the hand stitching, I didn't know I had all that in me. And I sit for hours. And my mom was here the other day, and she even said, I don't know how you do all that hand stitching. I don't know. And my mom is proficient. She can sew, like my mom could sew anything, and I was like, I don't know. It was in me. And I think about being a little girl, and I do remember taking scraps of things from my mom and making like little things, whether it was Barbie clothes or little, but I used the needle and thread. I was always with the needle and thread. And I never thought that would be something for me as an adult. But as I look back now, I'm like, oh, all those seeds were planted. That's why it feels so natural. And I'm not discouraged anymore when I'm sewing. I leave my sewing machine out. I mean, even this little thing I'm wearing, it was a piece of fabric. So today I'm waiting for you, and I stitched it all up, and because my sewing machine's out and everything, it's like I've turned into a sewing monster. I won't make clothes, but I'll take a t-shirt and I'll stitch it in, make it fit, or cut this. And I was always cutting my sister was like, she didn't like to give me stuff because I cut it and reshaped it and, cut the collar off of something and to cut the sleeves off. And, if I wasn't sewing it, I just needed for it to look different all the time, the way I needed it to look. And, You know, I take a
Mhm.
sweatshirt sometimes, and if there's a logo I don't like, I take a piece of fabric with something on it and I'll stitch a box over it and cover up
Mhm.
things. And they're always like, you, something else.
You started to pull out a quilt that's behind you. Can you pull that out and kind of show, not
It's,
that one, the one that's folded up over your other shoulder?
oh, this one.
Yeah, can you just show us
Oh,
what
oh,
it is?
okay.
I'm just
Oh, no, you
curious.
know what? I'm going to show you these are the things that were in, like I said, in my bin, and
Yeah.
this thing is still sitting here, and I keep saying I'm going to finish it. I'm going to bag her. It's just all these wonderful pieces of plaid that my girlfriend's like in the garment industry, and she brings me
Mhm.
boxes of. For years she was bringing. I used to make zipper pouches with.
Okay.
She used to
Mhm.
bring me wool. She used to bring me all kinds of fabric, and so she brought me like all these. They're like stapled to these cardboard things,
Right, the
and
samples.
yeah, the
Mhm.
samples and bags of them. And so I picked them all apart. And yeah, this is one of the things that came, but it needs a life. And it's so cute.
Yes. Yes,
It's
it does. Put a
it
backing
needs
and
a life.
batting on that thing.
Yes. This is this, and this one, of course, is new. This is
Right.
posted up. So,
Yeah.
oh my God, this one. I don't know how if I'm ever going to be able to sell this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh my God, I'm so
So
in love
what
with it.
thread did you use for those big, I guess they're white or yellow stitches?
Yellow.
Oh, use pearl. Okay, great.
Carole. Yeah, this is the eight.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
eight. I live for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got
I
lots of
just
spools of
bought
that
this, which
too.
I'm feeling some interest in. It's very fine, but
Yeah.
such a thick, beautiful thread. I think this is where I just bought this. I don't even know what it's called or what. It's pretty fine. You can't really there again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
see.
it's a little bit finer than the DC balls, but I'm going to try that for top stitching and a sewing machine if I ever get around to top stitching anything. Maybe I'm going to do some pot holders or
Mhm.
table runners that I just
Right.
saying.
Another great thread for machine top stitching is a 12 weight thread.
Okay.
And I think Aurifil makes them, a couple of manufacturers make them. So you might want to, investigate those. I'll put a link, by the way, everybody, in this video.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
But I'm going to pause because
Okay.
I want to share some images of some other works by Karen. Resume. Okay. So here are some images of some of Karen Gibson Roc's work. So let's start with the one in the bottom middle. This is an image that of the quilt you just showed us. I pulled these off
Yes.
Instagram.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that one. It looks like stained glass in that image.
I I'm very inspired by a lot of people, in the quilter Instagram arena, and I've seen a few people hang their quilt tops in front of the sunlight so you could see through it and you can see the pattern and you can see how many squares you used, and I thought I'm going to try that. So I've done it a couple times, and I just love the viewers just get a window into how much goes into the piecing together these quilts.
Mhm.
And this quilt in particular, I didn't know what I was going to do. I don't really like black fabric, but I had all this only I love black, the color and the fabric. Like I love black, working with it and the lint, and I'm Virgo and I can't stand to see the lint on the black fabric. But I said, I'm going to work with this and I'm just going to leave the lint until it's finished. I'm not going to roll it off. I'm going to use it. And it has helped me to appreciate, because I know when it's washed and rolled off and thing, I won't see any lint. But
Right.
anyway, yeah. Anyway, I knew that this fabric, this beautiful African print, needed something to really make it stand out and not get swallowed up in sewing it all together. It needed space. The fabric alone needed space, and And, you know, who doesn't love like a triangle? Who doesn't love it? But it was going back and forth how I was going to shape it. And I wanted to keep it simple because the fabric was so abstract. And so I did a few test squares and everything, and people, you know, I got a lot of good feedback. And so I just kept going and going and going. And now, yeah, we've come to the place where I've done the hand stitching, which I wasn't going to use the yellow thread. I was just going to keep it black. So again, the fabric could stand out. And then I was like, no, it's just going to be, no. And so I just did one square with the yellow thread. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. I didn't even have enough thread. I had to wait like 2 weeks for a thread. I was like, oh my God, what if I can't get the exact thing? And so I'm going all over the place. And yes, just yesterday, I got my 2 new spools. I can finish her up, and
Yeah.
I can't
And
wait.
as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about this quote that I pulled off your Instagram feed about walking with simplicity. And the way you described your process in terms of designing this quilt really feels like you honoring that particular idea of simplicity, which of course is very central to the modern quilt movement. But let's jump to this piece, which I know is behind you. And this is more of an art quilt, but I see more of that lovely hand stitching. Tell us about this piece. First of all, what's the title and what's the inspiration?
This piece is called C, as you can see the word C. Instead of using eyes, I use the word C. And this is where a little bit of poetry will come into my pieces. Not too often. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna move into it. But and that's fabric paint, and I glopped it on to make it really texture and bumpy, and like if you rub your hands across it, it's just like, it's like, wow, like, and it's all dried up. It's like really cool. And then I did a hand stitch, not the wide hand stitch. I did the closer. The hand stitch is much closer on that, as opposed to the rest of the stitching is a wider hand stitch.
Right.
But I woke up, you know, like when you get an inspiration, you woke up and I cut everything out and placed it like really, really quickly. It was like it was in my head. Of course, then it took 6 months to stitch it, sit down and stitch it all together. I have an affinity for pop art, you know, art that isn't realism. I'm not a realism type of artist. That's where I think some of the abstract comes in.
Right.
And just the shapes, of course, come from the whole quilting thing.
Yeah.
Being true to that. And
it also evokes, it also evokes a little bit of the African mask aesthetic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And this to me is like you're removing your mask. That's why there's no definition in the face. It's like you're blank now, and you don't even have eyes. It's like your soul is seeing the world, and you're seeing what is your truth, what is truth, how we're treated as Black people, how we are, how much we expect, and how much we are willing to deal with. But we all see, this represents all Black people seeing the truth, which is the fact that we know what's going on, and it's back to that conversation about we can't do anything about it other than do our art and protest through art. But it's not always our conversation to have. It's not always our thing to change, because we did not create racism. We did not create this. We helped build it, but enslaved. But the conversation is, how can we all as a people, human race, come to accept our part in what racism is, and how we can move forward. We're just seeing it. We see it. But our talking, it falls on deaf ears, because as you can see, from 1970 to 2021, we're still marching, we're still fighting, we're still talking about this, we're still carrying on.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation, but that's what this piece for me is representative of, is that we see y'all, we see.
Ah, it's wonderful. So many things were popping into my head, but let's move on. I want to know about this piece.
Oh, the African flower piece. Now
Yes.
this was something. This was working with linen. And that's
Ah,
kind of tough. I enjoy working with linen with the totes, but not so much with quilting. But I love the finish.
mhm.
Um,
Now, the
of
African print, though, is 100% cotton, or is that also a
yes,
linen?
yes, no, 100% cotton. And
Okay.
as you can see, I deconstructed the flower, which
Yes.
each piece is cut into 2 boxes and then restitched. I didn't just use a box
Got it.
because a lot of my work is simple. So it's about the fabric and what you do with the fabric is what is
Mhm.
important. I think that I mean, yes, I will definitely experiment in deconstructing piece and modern, you know, and leave space and thing. Um, but there are simple standards to quilting, like this checkerboard.
Mhm.
I love, like sometimes we go so far away from the simpleness, the elegance of simple design and simple pattern,
Yes.
and we turn the quilt into something else. So I just like to keep a few in that foothold, and then I'll go off and run with some wild, cutting all everything up and doing some this and that. But
Right.
here and there, I like to see. So I posted just the fabric, and a friend of mine out of Philly, she was like, okay, I need that one. I was like, I didn't do anything with it yet. She was like, I need something with that. So I drew a design for it, then I cut it, and I didn't like it when I laid it out.
Mhm.
So then I just reassembled and I said, oh, I'm going to just keep it simple. The flowers want me to keep it simple. The African feel, the African fabric, and the beauty
Mhm.
of it wants me to keep it simple. So I did this, and she just loved it. The thread, hand stitching thread is yellow again. I'm in this yellow thread. I don't know what it is.
Well, yellow is one of my favorite colors, so
Yeah,
I'm all in that with you. Did,
right.
did you back this with linen or with a different fabric?
Same white, just the white linen, the same thing that I'm doing with the black one. Black,
Okay.
plain, no patterns on the back. Because
Okay.
the thread, the the hand stitching on the back is so beautiful without any
Right.
other patterns or anything.
And
It
I
was
also want to point out that although Karen has used the traditional checkerboard, she's also altered that with the rectangles on the right and left, and then the asymmetrical border, the border to the left and right, but not a border on the top and bottom. So that's a nod to modernism as well.
yeah, not doing what's expected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So tell us about these fabulous guys.
Oh, this got me so much attention on IG. Wow, I was floored. This thing has just gotten me so much attention, period. Um, uh, this one woman, she's an artist and a curator herself. She was like, I need a piece of that. So what I did was I said, you pick what 3 you want. And she picked the 3 squares that she wanted. And I basted it and stitched it and made her a wall piece.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to the drawing board and added a bunch more and then made a bigger wall hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because the new one, it's up on Instagram as well and in my Etsy shop. It I did hand stitching, but I did it in circles.
Right.
Circles
Mm-hmm.
and circles and circles. Now on my modern quilters like statement, I say, modern quilting needs to adhere to straight lines and everything, right? And there I go, and then I quilt circles after I say that.
Well, and actually, Karen, that's a bit of a myth about modern quilting.
Yes, it is.
That's a myth.
I was like, what did I just say? And then what did I just do? But then, because at first I was like following seams and, the stitching can, I'm just not a squiggly stitch person. I'm not big on squiggly stitch. You know,
Right.
when you, I want to learn to use a long arm and all that stuff. But I might do bigger squiggles or bigger. I just like the bigger. I know I won't. I know this is one thing I know I won't do the small squiggly stitch on my
Right.
quilt. If
Right.
maybe perhaps I would give a quilt and work in a collective, or give a quilt top and say, you do you on the quilt. And if it came back squiggly, then fine, I'll embrace it, of course, but it would never be through my direction or
Right.
yeah, I'm not big on the squiggly.
Well, part of the beauty of the modern quilt movement, which is something I'm always saying in my lectures and anywhere else people will listen to me, is that there is so much freedom to not just build on tradition like we saw in your previous quilt, but also to reimagine and reinvent it. All aspects of it, other than it's got to be 3 layers, a top, something in the middle, and a backing. That's a quilt. Now,
Right.
how we construct it, colors
Right.
and shapes and quilting,
Right.
whatever, all of that is open to reinterpretation. And I'm with you. When I do actually quilt my own pieces, I have a very eccentric approach to it. And I'm often asked about how much of that I plan, and I'll say, really none of it. It emerges. The quilt will tell me what to do. One last question though about these pieces, about how large would each individual piece be that we're looking at?
Oh, these?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. I actually have,
We
where is
won't
it?
be able to see you because I'm sharing a slide, but
Oh, I didn't know I can measure it for you. I actually have one that I didn't use. So I
okay,
will,
just approximately.
yeah, I never even measured each one, but it was 12 by 12.
Okay, so
One of
these
those
are
12 by
pretty, so you've done some pretty small, some smaller piecing within each square. One of the
Yes.
things I really like in your
Oh,
fabric
each
choices,
square, there's four of them put together. So you have your 6 by 6
right?
times 4. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
One of the things I really like is the fabric, the white fabric with the black circles or ovals, and you just
Yes.
get glimpses of it. That's really cool. That
Thank
interrupted line is
you.
just,
You know what it is? It's a pillowcase.
ah, see, reinvent,
I
reinterpret,
I
reuse, reduce,
loved
and
it.
reuse.
Yes.
Well, the last piece I want to talk about in these images, of course, is the Lady Zen Quilt, which for those of you who may not be members of the Modern Quilt Guild, MQG now issues a quarterly journal for members. So if you join MQG, you get this journal free. And in each journal, there are block and quilt patterns for members to use. And Karen has a quilt in the same issue that I'm in, by the way. But tell us about Lady Zen. What was the inspiration for this piece?
Wow, that thing took me on a journey. So the main thing for me was really trying to make it look abstract,
Mm-hmm.
but having to adhere to a pattern that wasn't too difficult to use, to make, to come up
Right.
with, So I really took pencil crayons, and I did it that way first
Mm-hmm.
in my notebook, and just started, I picked all the colors because I knew the colors, because it was given to us, the color palette.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took all the pencil crayons that matched as closely as possible and sat down and just started coloring in the boxes. And I colored it. I did a few things. And then the top left, I guess, facing us with the big triangle with the 3 levels in
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first one I came up with. And that was when I colored that, I was like, oh, I'm onto something. I like that. And then I of course, didn't want to repeat that. So then I went on to the next box on the right, and I did something different, and then I like that. And then the two boxes on the bottom are, if you notice, diagonally, it's like a different variation of that box. And then you see where the gray is, and you go diagonally down. It's a different variation of that. So you've got
Cool.
two blocks that match, like that have the same theme, but reimagined. And then, so it's definitely almost four small quilts that you just stitched together.
Right. Well, this is a beautiful design in its simplicity. And as you were saying earlier, you've used simple shapes, you know, the basic shapes that we all as little kids learn to draw.
I wanted
Triangles, squares,
right. I wanted
rectangles.
anybody using this pattern to do it like in a blank, and then but walk away with something that is like with a real like abstract feel, like that they created an artistic quilt, not just like a quilt. I wanted people to, when they make this or use this pattern, and no matter what fabric you use, you're gonna get this awesome looking art quilt.
Yes.
In a sense, that's what I kind of hoped for in this.
Yeah, and I think you achieved it beautifully.
Thank you.
And I agree with you. I was thinking the same thing about fabric and color choices, depending on how you used color and value, you know, dark, medium, and light. If you flip it around, you get a quilt that would look very different from the inspiration quilt here. And again, for those of you who are interested in this quilt, you've got to be a member of the Modern Quilt Guild, and then you'll get access to this journal on the website, and the pattern and all the instructions are included there. So let me stop share, go back to us. Thank you so much for telling us about those pieces. It's really interesting to have a glimpse into your process as well. That even when you're creating a pattern, you are hoping that people who might use that pattern can be inspired and really express their own creative vision. I think that's beautiful.
Yes, I actually am going to remake that quilt with like choose one of the colors. And you see, like, even the fabric you have behind you, that like wild stripy thing that you have. It's so funny. The colors in behind you are almost like the colors palette of the quilt that we were just talking about. It was like when you were up on there in that quilt, I was like, look at that. It's very similar. But you see why now I'm saying that, because this bright print, beautiful print that you've incorporated with these solids. That's all I'm saying. Like with the quilt that I did, I would like to do it with a bunch of solids and just pick one of the colors and do, like, say a wild print. It would just, it would be so great.
Yeah, that's one of my go-to choices when I'm making quilts.
Is one of the fabric
take a focus print, like, yeah. Let me turn around and pull this off the wall. This is actually a new version of my mid-century modern curves quilt, and I'll turn it this way and hold up.
Yes.
And I'll put a link to that fabric, the name of it, but it's a free spirit print that one of my students in a class I taught had used, and I fell in love with it. So she told me where she bought it. So I immediately went online and bought a couple of yards of it. But yeah, combining, because there's so many wonderful prints out there available to us now. Whether you're a modern, traditional, whatever you want to label yourself, it doesn't really matter. If you make quilts.
I found this one print. I loved her. I went to her website. I bought it directly from her. Found her on Spoonflower because I love her. Her name is Jensky. I love her print so much. I went on Spoonflower, so I ordered something else, but it's taking forever. I think they lost it.
Oh,
I know, it's terrible. But here is what
We'll put a link, by the way, to that artist. I'll get the information from Karen.
here I am, so I don't even know what I'm gonna do. Yes,
Ooh.
look, I had to buy two. I'm just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm sitting here just,
Oh,
isn't it great? So
yeah.
that's, I would like to do something. I'm gonna like be inspired to create something that you've got going on here. Yes. Oh, I have to put them up today, later on today, because this is like a new endeavor
Hold it
that I
up a
have
little
going.
bit. Yeah. Oh, let me spotlight it so people can really see you. There we
Yeah.
go. Okay. Ooh.
And then, and
Oh,
that
and
is,
it has that gray fabric, that textured
yes,
fabric
the
in it.
gray and the brown. And then in it, that this fabric is a vintage, like a vintage table placemat runner thing that I've used in various pieces of my different quilts.
That's
I like,
wonderful.
yeah, I like to throw in like, you know, I'll do the reusable fabric. I will do,
Right.
but I not necessarily have done a whole piece. I would, but what I have and what I've gotten hold of, like the pillowcase that I love, when I looked at it and I started cutting it up, I was like, ooh, snip, like little hints of that will be so great in that, you know? And this is just, this is where I was inspired by you, I have to say.
Thank you.
My curves.
Yes.
My own cutting and no pin stitching. And this is all denim. It's like a, you know, those hats. It's that fabric of the hat, the train
Conductor.
hat.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
The old time thing, and it's pleated in the front and it kind of stands up a little bit. It's the same,
right.
It's that fabric. And I had it from years ago sitting in my bin, like I said, from making totes. I had all this fabric digging around, and now I'm pulling it up and doing interesting. So these are just so people can have pieces of quilts, because people they want to enjoy it. But you know, at this time now, a lot of people can't fork out a couple $100 for a quilt, or even a wall hanging, or what have you. And they don't want placemats. A lot of people don't use placemats anymore and things like that. But people will hang something on their wall.
Right.
And I was inspired by one of the other Instagram, a couple of people have been saying that, you know, and I said, I totally agree. And then it's easy to ship, and people can frame them at their leisure. And these just, I went back and forth on hand top stitching now. And I was like, I went back and forth. Like the whole night I couldn't sleep. Should I stitch? No. And then finally I was like, make a decision. I made a decision. These are not to have any stitching on top.
Right.
I feel like,
well, and particularly with a wall hanging piece, you know, that's going to be under frame and matting and glass and whatever. You don't need the stitching to secure the piece, because the framing. And by the way, folks, for those of you who might be thinking about having a textile piece framed, make sure that your framer puts what are called spacers between the glass and the front, or the fabric itself, because fabric needs space to breathe. You don't want the glass or plexiglass touching the fabric. So just remind them to put little tiny spacers just to lift it away, you know, an 1/8 or, you know, 1/4 of an inch, whatever they decide.
Right. I'll write a little note. Thanks for that tip. I'll write a little note. I mean, I realize, me personally, I would do that, but not everybody knows about that.
Not everybody's familiar with, you know, how to frame pieces. They think that the mat is enough, but a little bit more space is sometimes needed.
Because the fabric sort of almost protrudes out a little bit. It protrudes out. It's not flush with this.
No, it's not.
Because behind this, I had to put it under some heavy books and press to get these seams, because some of these seams are so bulky, because you are stitching together a heavier fabric, in this case, heavier fabric. And it's like, you know, I try to make my seams, you know, a good size so
Right.
it can lay flat, but still
Mhm.
right at the knot, at the point, it gets really bulky. And so I put it in a book. I'll put it in a book overnight or
Mhm.
something. I'll really iron it out. And then when I glue it down to the board, to the backboard, I'll
Mhm.
really stretch it as much as
Mhm.
it can without pulling the seams
Right.
and showing the thread, you know.
The
So
other thing though about fabric is that even as much as we might press it, over time it absorbs humidity from the surrounding climate. So it will poof itself back up a
yeah,
little bit. And over
yeah,
time it will do that, which is the
yeah,
other reason it needs spacers so that it breathes and that humidity doesn't get trapped in there because
yeah,
it'll mildew. It'll
yeah.
mildew the
Okay.
piece.
Yeah. Oh, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Well, I have one last question before we wrap up.
Okay.
Uh, and that is, you're also a spoken word artist and actor and all kinds of things. How do all those worlds come together for you today?
To me, it's the belly of the beast as an artist.
Okay.
It's like you have all of this glory churning about inside of you. And for me, I feel blessed that I can express it in a few different ways. Because I feel like when somebody's only focused on one thing, they burn out. That's why a lot of artists go through certain things in their life. You know, they need the accolades all the time. Um, and if you don't have something else to tiptoe in and feel as strongly about, you know, um, excuse me for just 1 second.
Sure.
If that was my husband talking all loud when he was on a friggin' Zoom call, I would be in trouble. I don't even care if you leave this in for all those husbands out there all loud. We're both artists in this house, so it is not easy that we all have to, you know.
Yes.
And then I
Mhm.
think I was closing the door and that was affecting the Wi-Fi. So,
Ah, okay.
but we're wrapping up. We'll see how we go. Anyway, back to the fact that, you know, having acting for me, let's just say that is, I don't want to say it's a job because there's a lot of good, juicy, creative stuff in there. And I only do commercial acting. I don't really have the desire to be like in sitcoms or movies or,
Right.
you know, unless my husband insists and throws me in something and, you know, because he's a filmmaker. So
Ah,
that in itself, you know, he's done all my music videos when I've done spoken word, we performance. I'm in front of his camera so much. I'm his muse, like with spoken word. You know, we create, we're a very creative couple.
it's wonderful.
But the spoken word and the music, when I create something, the lyrics for a song and I go record it, and then the eventual coming together of it is magic for me. Just actually getting up on stage and or just creating a new piece and learning it and ingesting it and then sharing it with the world, that is something that I thrive on. And then now I have the quilting, which the sewing, which I thought before it would be the bags and the bag company, and it wasn't. And so that trolloped into this. And so now I have these three wonderful things.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how they merge. Not so much that each container of art shows what else I'm doing. I don't know if that will be little peak things. Um, I like the woman who won, she won something at QuiltCon and she had poetry on her quilt. I forget her name. Her quilt won something and it had poetry on it. It was,
Probably Sean Kimber.
yeah, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, it's probably her.
And I thought about when I first started back too, I thought about maybe that's something that I would want to do. And then something in me is like, no, that's not my journey. Maybe a
Mhm.
word here, maybe something phrase here, maybe it will, you know, but I don't know how much like
Right.
really writing out
Right. Mhm.
because I express myself poetically through spoken word, through writing, through all of that good stuff. But it is just a churning place where I can go in and decide where I'm swimming today, and
Yes.
have choices, and I don't feel locked into one thing. And you know, I feel blessed to be able to dip and choose and create and come out and just live as an artist. Like I said, that's been my ultimate goal and my ultimate dream. It's not what accolades, it's not what comes out of it, it's not where I land with it, it's not who sees it, it's just that I can do it.
Right.
Yeah. And acting, last year I did very, very well in the commercial acting, so financially that was enabling me to do. This year I've been able to, and then if COVID kept us inside
Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
So, but
Watching more commercials.
yes, and surfing on Etsy for fabric. Oh my
Oh
God.
yeah. And now you've got me thinking I need to go to Spoonflower.
Yes,
I'll put a link
flower
to
is
that too,
really
folks.
lovely. It's lovely. It's lovely. It's lovely. But I
And
don't
it's
know.
nice to be able to support other independent artists who are creating fabric.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I believe that quilting really starts with those people.
Mhm.
Quilting starts with the fabric artist, with the textile artist, with the printing, with the color schemes and choices. We get to go in their playground and
True.
pick
True.
and choose, and then take it and then reassemble it and repurpose it
Yeah.
and make it shine. Like, it's a marriage made in heaven. But that's what quilting is. It's your choices.
Yes.
You as a quilter, what are you choosing to do with that fabric?
That is so true. That is so true.
As a trendsetter, like yourself, as a trendsetter, it's all trend setting in quilting is all about your fabric choices. Really, we can all do the stitching and the sewing, and the thing is the way we put the fabric together, cut it up, repurpose, reassemble, don't do or do, it really, really is up to where you start.
That's true.
What is on your table?
That's true.
Yeah, nothing more, nothing less.
Well, thank you so much, Karen Gibson Roc.
Pleasure. I
And everyone, I will be putting links to Karen's spoken word output so that you can find her on YouTube and her website. So there'll be links all over the place. So
I have
please
one more
do
thing.
check that out.
Sorry, I
Go
have
ahead.
one more thing, lovely. I'm gonna get your address because I need to send you a copy. I have a few more left
Ah,
of my
this is
my
the book.
This is
Oh,
the book. I have a few more left. I will send you a copy.
oh, thank
And then,
you.
yeah, people, I only have like about half a dozen copies left before I maybe do another reprint, and I'll probably do another edition with adding a few more and maybe doing hardcover. We'll see. But there's a few
Yeah.
more of the signed copies that I do have from a couple of years. I published in this like 2010 or 11. I mean, 2019.
It only feels like 2010.
Yeah, like I can't remember when
Everything feels so long ago.
right? It was just like 3 years ago. Let me see. I don't remember. Oh, 16. This is from 2016, 17. So because I've started writing another, so I said I need to you never close a door on something, but I've started writing a new book, so I really want to finish sharing the few copies that I have. And,
well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I could have talked to Karen for another 5 hours about all the other areas of her life. And now we know her life partner's life as well. So there's a lot to be explored. As I said earlier, there will be links all over the place. So please check out all of Karen's wonderful work, her Etsy shop, her website, her book, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you again, everyone. Be well, and we'll see you for the next conversation. And thank you, Karen. Bye-bye.